Being in survival mode after being in a relationship with someone who is narcissistic is very common. This feeling, overwhelming, anxious feeling that you feel either after the relationship has ended, or even if you have to still deal with the person, whether it's someone you're co-parenting with or someone in your family, someone you just can't escape. It's very common to feel like you are in the survival mode and fight or flight mode constantly because of what you've been through. Since this person is very manipulative, very self-centered, extremely selfish, abused you in ways that you didn't really understand, whether it's emotional abuse, maybe even physical abuse, because of the things that you've gone through that I think sometimes we don't really realize had such an impact on how we feel. Like we didn't even realize that we were in this constant heightened state of not knowing when the shoe was going to drop or not knowing what was going to happen next. And that causes your body to be trained to kind of live in that real chronic stress response. It's the unpredictable environment. It's not knowing what this person's going to do or say next. It's all of those things that when you're in those environments for long periods of time, it has a negative impact on you. The negative impact that it has is that you essentially went through trauma, and now you're learning how to deal with that trauma response that keeps coming up. A trauma response refers to the way you are going to cope with something that you experienced after the fact. Now, when you go through something traumatic, we are not able to process in real time as something is happening, how it's making us feel, and we're not able to always fully deal with how we're feeling and what we just went through in the moment. And sometimes even right after, we still can't deal with it. There's only so much that our minds and our bodies can process at one time. And so healing from something traumatic, it just takes time. And most people don't know that they went through something traumatic. Most people, they don't see how that relationship or that experience, that traumatic event is impacting their lives today. Essentially it's your baggage. The baggage that you carry around every single day because of what you've been through. Do you know what it is? Do you know how it impacts your life? Or are you just carrying it around completely unaware as to how it's hurting you or hurting someone else? When you experience a trauma, you become very hyper aware. Being hyper aware is that state where you're constantly on the lookout. You're trying to find all of the things that you perceive to be dangerous. When you're in that state, because you've walked on eggshells for a very long time, because you've been on that high alert, it is going to completely drain you. You're going to feel on edge and you're going to feel absolutely exhausted. That is why after these relationships end, most people go through a recovery period where if they're not already experiencing anxiety or this fight or flight mode or this chronic stress that they're in, they will experience it after. And this is their kind of downtime where all they want is quiet. They're trying to learn how to take care of themselves because they're in a significant amount of pain. When you're on high alert for that long, you are just overworked and you're not going to be able to sustain yourself. And usually also that's when a breakdown happens. And then of course, if you're still in a relationship with someone who's narcissistic, this is usually when you're told that you're crazy. When you struggle with chronic stress or being in this fight or flight mode, it's normal for you to almost be in avoidance, where you're trying to either avoid that person, you want to go no contact, which that's fine, and in some instances it's 100% necessary and acceptable, but there are times where you can't go no contact, and now you have to learn how to deal with this person and really deal with yourself also being around this person. You have to deal with how you feel out of sorts, how you feel that stress and that chronic anxiety that's kind of living inside of you because of the situations that you've been in, where you have been on edge, where you have been emotionally abused, where someone has threatened you or manipulated you or was gaslighting you, and the feeling of the minute the phone rings and you see who it is, or getting the text message and you see who it is, and just the feeling of stress in your chest and in your body that you experience knowing I have to engage with this person and it's like the last thing in the world that I want to do because of how this is making me feel. So it's common to want to avoid that. It's common to want to just avoid situations, avoid this person altogether. Again, in some situations, it's necessary and healthy, but other times it's not. And you're avoiding the one thing that you're trying to learn to do, and that's take care of yourself and learn how to deal with this person, which most likely is going to incorporate boundaries. When you avoid for a long period of time, you can actually learn how to disassociate. This is where you start to disconnect from your own thoughts, how you feel, your bodily sensations, and you disassociate from yourself. You start to become disconnected from yourself. That is definitely a symptom of someone who has experienced trauma, is in a constant state of fight or flight, and experiences a lot of anxiety. When the disassociation happens, it can also lead to things like panic attacks, where sometimes the feeling in the body just arises so quickly and it comes completely out of nowhere, because you're either going to carry your stress and anxiety in two places. You're either going to carry it in your mind or you're going to carry it in your body. And sometimes it's easier to carry it in the mind, because if you can understand the mind and how it works and what's happening, then that'll help to kind of soothe the bodily sensations. But if it's just in the body first, and you don't understand, okay, that my anxiety is now starting to live in the body, then when those bodily sensations arise and you are unaware of this, you're going to be reactive to that. And then you're going to make up a story about them. So again, either the anxiety lives in the mind first, and then the bodily sensations happen and you react to both of those things and it just keeps the cycle going, or the anxiety is living in the body and then your mind creates a story about what it is that you're experiencing in the body, and then again you get stuck in that cycle. Your body's fight or flight response is triggered by also psychological fears. It's a built-in defense mechanism that creates these fears inside of you. It creates things like the heart racing and the pain in the chest. It creates all the symptoms that you're having because of those fears that are living way, way in the back of the mind. Now, remember what I just said. Anxiety lives in the mind. The conscious, we're not talking about the conscious mind. We're able to really see something. We're talking about the mind way in the back here that you can't really always access, and you're living your life and what's going on back here is just coming through so fast that sometimes you don't have time to even realize what it is that you were just focusing on that's all of a sudden caused you to go into fight or flight. The fight or flight mode is necessary because it's supposed to be protecting you from threats, from something that you perceive to be a threat. So it's going to give you things like always feeling on edge, constantly worrying and feeling nervous about something. So it's important to, when you do feel worry and fear, to understand what was the story I was just telling myself. Or even if you're starting to feel this like stress response in your body, to understand, okay, what's happening right now in my present moment, and learning tools to start grounding yourself so you can get more centered and not let either your body just do whatever it wants to do or your mind just take over and take you down a rabbit hole. These fears that we sometimes have of non-threatening things, even someone that you've had a relationship with who's really toxic, really unhealthy. Yes, you went through something traumatic with that person. Yes, it wasn't okay, but you're no longer in that relationship with that person. And let's say you are, that person doesn't have to have that kind of control over you, but that's something that you have to work at. You have to be able to work at trusting yourself, having a great relationship with yourself, learning how to build this relationship so when you do say those things to yourself, you actually believe them. So you start learning how to not allow other people to have that kind of control over you. This completely will start relaxing you. It will get you out of fight or flight, but you have to do the daily work. This is not a pill that you're going to take and it's going to completely get all of this out of you and you're going to get back to your old self. It's not going to work like that. You have been in traumatic experiences. You are now in a chronic stress state or a state of fight or flight, which is normal after coming out of these relationships. And sometimes it's not even necessarily the relationship that really caused the trauma. It's what happened after the relationship. So if you are co-parenting with someone, if it's a family member, sometimes it is the backlash that is the most traumatic stuff that you go through, and not always necessarily the things that were happening in the relationship. Now, how do we get out of fight or flight? It is about recognizing when you are in that state. It's understanding your triggers that get you to that state. That is extremely important. You have to understand What triggers me to all of a sudden feel like I'm stressed out of my mind and I'm in this heightened state of alert where I'm like on the lookout and I have to be super aware of my surroundings. So what is going on in the mind that is causing that? And to validate that experience, not as being accurate, because obviously if there is no threat, then there is no real fear or threat that's there that's valid on a logical level, but your fears are never logical. They're always emotional. They're always based on the past. So validating yourself that you understand that this experience could be overwhelming, that yes, it's normal that you feel this way based on what you've went through. So it's about learning how to parent yourself, like I always talk about. It's about learning how to have that open and honest conversation with yourself about what you're experiencing and allow yourself to experience it without judgment, but not attaching to it so you feed it and it makes the situation worse. Things like self-compassion are very important when you're going through this process and you're trying to heal. You're trying to heal your nervous system. You're trying to heal a part of you that has been abused, that has been stressed, that has gone through a lot in your life. And you have to be able to hold a space for yourself in a very human way to say, hey, it's normal that you feel this way. We're not going to feel like this forever. This is just our healing period. When you start doing stuff like that for yourself and you have those inner conversations and you're giving yourself grace and compassion, you start to process your emotions. You start to actually allow yourself to break open and feel what it is that you need to feel. All of it, the worry, the fear, the insecure, like everything that needs to come up will start to come up. And that's what has to happen so we can get all of that stuff out of ourselves without judgment to be able to start healing something. Self-care is also very fundamental when you're going through this, because you have to learn what are the things that are going to ground me, what are the things that are going to cause me to feel relaxed, at peace. And I think we judge ourselves sometimes on what those things are. I know for me, there have been times in my life where working out, sometimes 2 times a day, I had to do in order to like feel grounded, feel centered. And now I don't feel as though I need that as much. And now it's more of meditation and practicing those things, which I was doing at the time as well. But it's all about listening to your body and making a conscious effort to get to know yourself at this point in your life and what is it that you need in order to feel grounded, in order to calm yourself down. Even the little things like learning how to actually do deep breathing, learning how to meditate, taking time to just be still, taking time to be more in the moment of what you're doing, even if it is cooking dinner or doing the dishes, just to be more present is a real practice that can be very hard to do when you've never done it. But that will actually help you to get out of fight or flight mode. That will help you to understand your fears on a more logical level versus an emotional level. Understanding your fears logically is going to mean that you're going to start reframing some of the challenges and thoughts that you're thinking. We want to get rid of all the assumptions. We want to take back our power. We want to take it away from the people and the situations that have held it at one point and not giving it to them anymore. So in order to do that, you have to be self-aware and you have to stop yourself when you're in the middle of that conversation, and you have to start learning how to challenge that conversation. Like I was saying earlier, a big part also is going to be boundaries. You have to learn how to limit your stress. You have to learn to limit the things that are in your life, whether it's people or situations that are causing you to be exposed to those high levels of stress. Remember, managing your fight or flight mode, it just takes time and it takes consistency and it takes patience. But if you do it daily, if your goal is to be more aware that you are taking care of this part of yourself at this point in your life, you'll get there. You absolutely will get there, because everyone does. You're no exception. You're not going to stay here forever. It's just about making a conscious effort to get there a little bit faster than you normally would and avoiding more pain that you would probably walk into having done nothing at all. Well, guys, thanks for joining me this week. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe down below. I always link everything down below in terms of social media. If you're interested in working with me or taking any of my courses, please check the description box down below for all that information, and I'll see you in our next video.